Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first ever episode of our currently unnamed Roseburn Avenue radio talk show. I'm Zach, the bassist.
And I'm John, the guitarist.
In our first vlog, I asked for any questions you would like us to respond to, and we got the following from the viewer quoted in. How did you all start on music, and what makes you all continue to be motivated?
So we've put the question to the band, and we've collated our responses.
From our vocalist, Kiro, I started getting interested in music around when I was 5 or 6, I believe. I loved listening to the music on the radio, and before I knew it, I started singing along to them too. I only sang for fun though, and I actually stopped singing after elementary school. I don't remember the reason why, however. It stayed that way until I was 14, when I started getting into 21 Pilots. I'd say that they were a big reason as to why I started singing again, even if it was just for fun. At first, I only sang the songs with my friend, since the others would joke about my singing. I thought that I was fairly bad at singing, and to be fair, I still do think so to this day. Aw, you're better than you think you are. The thing that got me interested in taking music and singing more seriously was bandori. I liked the songs, and every once in a while, I'd sing along to them too. But the catalyst that changed everything would probably have been a compliment that a certain Mr. X gave me after I sang for the first time in the official service voice chat. I think it was the first time someone ever gave me a compliment for my singing, so it was a huge confidence booster for me. And from there, I got to where I am now, I suppose. I'd say that the motivation for me to continue singing is a compliment from him, as well as the genuine feeling of fun whenever I sing. That's the thing that's keeping me motivated right now.
And from a vocalist, Rita, I always loved music ever since I was very, very little. I went to a music school for 12 years, so music has always been a huge part of who I am. I always knew I wanted to sing more than anything, and I have been doing covers of songs I love for many years. But Roseburn Avenue is the first time I'm in a committed musical project with other people. It's been a wonderful journey. What keeps me motivated is passion. There's nothing in this world I'm more passionate about than singing. Even in days when things aren't looking great and my mood is down in the dumps, there's a flame inside me that never goes out, and no matter what, I'll always find it and keep going.
Okay, from the White Will, our keyboard player. My parents got me to start playing the piano when I was 6, since one of our family friends was a piano teacher. Nowadays, I don't study under a teacher anymore, and I'm just motivated to play whatever I think sounds cool. Usually, that ends up being Chopin, or rhythm game, or anime song arrangements.
As for me, I started to play the piano at 6. This was also supposed to help with my admittedly terrible motor skills. Long before that, as I've been told, the only music that would actually calm me down as a crying baby was Baroque chamber music. Later on, I grew up listening to the Mandarin language radio of the early 2000s, so mostly Mandarin ballads with some attempts at Western-style danceable pop. With the guitar, I started with open chords at around 12 or so, before committing myself to play the electric, learning mostly by ear from the likes of the Shadows and the Ventures. I wrote my first complete song sometime in secondary school, admittedly at least a year after I completed my ABRSM Grade 8 theory exam. Things only truly came together for me after I took a basic drum kit course in my last year of secondary school, when I became familiar with all the instruments that I would eventually write with. Of all the things I credit with deep diving into music, I actually owe more than I would like to various mobile rhythm games I played while in middle school and in national service. While the rock and metal songs, which are still my main diet in terms of music till this day, tended to actually be on the more challenging end of things, so I got to play them more. I was also exposed to various other genres like rap, dance, noise pop, and so on. It was thus that I discovered Vietnamese and Thai pop music and observed how it evolved over the past couple of decades. As for what keeps me motivated in songwriting, I jot down musical ideas in my journal whenever they arise and take note of particular tropes and motifs that inspire me. I especially like listening to songs in languages that I don't understand, so that I tend to focus more on the music itself. Now, one exercise that I've actually had a habit of doing was to write some songs for my internal reference around certain tropes that I hear, like a certain drum beat or chord progression, just to see what my spin on it would look like.
Right, sounds interesting. For me, music has always been a part of my life At first as a listener before eventually crossing over to the creative side of things. I grew up in Singapore listening to my dad's CD collection whenever we went on road trips to Malaysia. And I really got into the Beatles, and I also enjoyed listening to the soundtrack to Grease the musical. As an elementary school student, I also had to learn how to play the recorder, which is probably an unsaid requirement of every student in an East Asian country. And I also learned how to play the piano for a year and a half before moving to the UK because, um, upper class Singaporean family, yeah. So my major turning point was when I first listened to The Rock Show by Blink 182, which was on a HMV compilation CD I got in late 2001. It was my first time properly listening to a punk rock song, and from there, I found myself diving into hard rock and heavy metal. A few years later, when I was in high school in Australia, I decided to become a musician with the typical rockstar dreams, and even formed a high school band with a couple of my friends. We didn't get very far because of our studies, but I had a lot of fun jamming in my garage. True story, we had the cops called on once. While I did audition to play the bass for a few local Melbourne bands when I was doing my bachelor's degree, Roseburn Avenue is my first major music project. Of everyone in the group, my motivation to actively work with music is probably the weakest, as I'm actually more passionate about education and fitness, but this gives me the advantage of time to hopefully make something that people will like without the pressure to keep churning out song after song. I mean, after having to mark my 8th grade students' holiday homework, I really do believe that quality is better than quantity. So yeah, hopefully they'll give you some idea as to our musical histories. And if you play an instrument, what keeps you going? Leave a comment.
Now, Zach, I believe quite a few of our viewers have been to or are interested in visiting Japan at some point in time. Since you're living and working in Japan, what's your take on life there?
Quality wise, not so different from life everywhere else, I guess. I mean, you wake up, you go to work, or you study and you sleep, and of course, if you do work, you pay taxes. But with the working culture, and I need to be rather diplomatic about this because I am a government employee. Um, it's tough and not for the faint-hearted, like mentally tough. The key to making a good impression to Japan in most workplaces is to, and I really cannot emphasize this enough, look productive. As a foreigner, I have some leeway, and I usually leave maybe around 15 to 30 minutes after I'm officially off the clock. But as an educator, I have willingly stuck around like I'm really late a few times to help students with their English learning goals, like especially if there's a speech contest coming up.
That's really thoughtful of you, Zach. Speaking about goals, as far as English education in Japan is concerned, what are your goals in the classroom?
As an idealist, I want to get everyone really hyped up about communicating in English in creative ways. But the reality is that because of the Japanese culture, okay, well, most students would just stay quiet because to them, making mistakes is a taboo, even though they are the single most important thing in language education. But at least two of my schools I'm working with, they are planning to use more IT in the classroom from April onwards. So hopefully I can make use of that to encourage the shy students to take more risks and to hopefully use more English. Realistically, though, my main focus is to further encourage the students who are genuinely interested in learning foreign languages. And you can probably imagine how impressed and motivated my students can become whenever I tell them about my immediate family being multilingual to varying degrees.
Indeed, I think making mistakes is intrinsic to the learning process, whether you learn from your own or from watching others. Yet at the same time, that concern of slipping up, whether in front of others or concern about living up to one's own expectations, that's very relatable even when one accepts that mistakes are very much necessary. Otherwise, there's even less for one to learn from.
Well, I used to be fairly thin skinned, but now, whenever I make mistakes in the classroom, I'll just simply laugh it up with the students, correct myself, and proceed as though nothing bad has happened. Yeah, so this will vary from person to person, And I do have the advantage of having lived my life the way I've lived it. But unless you're about to do something with serious life or death level consequences, the best way to cope with the mistakes that you make is to laugh it off, quickly apply your corrections, and learn from the experience. Um, it's like I've actually learned most of my limited practical Japanese grammar by making mistakes in the classroom and then learning from my Japanese colleagues.
Well, the positions are reversed in my case. Well, I can say for sure that when learning Japanese and starting as an adult rather than as an impressionable school kid, I've made my fair share of mistakes. Even all the way to Hakone Yumoto Station when I had to refund a ticket as I took a local train to Tokyo instead of the delayed romance car. But I'd be even more worried not to make them in the first place.
Well, I think that's more to do with the Japanese that foreigners learn rather than the Japanese that the local people use. In the end, the language that is taught overseas, it's just merely key to the culture, which also includes the actual Japanese language used by the locals, as well as the various dialects.
Well, to me, as someone who speaks slightly more than 3 languages, I'm less of a fan of measuring proficiency by certificates, and more of, to put it simply, whether I can simply ask the station staff for assistance, or whether I can banter with the bartender about local happening. I've managed the latter in French and Mandarin, and that's something that the national exams in either of those languages could never prepare me for.
Precisely. If I were to frame everything up nicely, try not to see a mistake as something soul crushingly bad. See it as an opportunity to become better. When Roseburn Avenue first started out as an unnamed band paying homage to the city of Rosalia as part of the Fun Dirty project, I personally made a lot of mistakes with my people management skills, and it was a major humble learning experience for me. I'd like to think that ever since having the band become semi autonomous from the original project, I've made less mistakes, but then again, I'm still learning right now.
That we all are. I believe it said somewhere that some people die at 25 and aren't buried until 75. That's by Benjamin Franklin. Which is also what I'm afraid will happen if I stop learning. Well, excuse me while I get my shovel.
Zombie allergic to shovel. Goodbye. So anyway, a couple of weeks late, but just out of curiosity, I've got a question for our viewers. What are your personal resolutions for 2021? For me, in no particular order, number one, put on some weight as part of my bodybuilding hobby. Number two, work on my six pack. Number three, Maria Kondo the hell out of my apartment. And number four, write more songs, even if it's just as a hobby rather than part of Roseburn Avenue.
As for me, while I'm not in the habit of making New Year's resolutions myself, I'm with you on the last one as well, since the ideas for me to write for myself like an exercise or a study based on a certain trope in any song that I've recently listened to that inspires me. Additionally, I very recently added Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to my fitness routine, and I suppose I've made my decision to stay on after my trial class at the start of the week. Like, we've discussed about making mistakes and learning from them, since I'm starting a martial art at all from scratch, I did get beaten down for the better part of my first hour sparring. But I guess that's part of the game.
I guess you could say that it's a school of literal hard knocks.
That sounds about right.
Okay, anyway, please feel free to share your resolutions in the comments down below, and we'll do our best to encourage you in our next episode. If you'd like, you can also tweet your resolutions to us for a more personalized experience, so see our description. So, that's it for our show today, and thank you very much for taking the time to listen to us. As usual, we hope you enjoy our channel, our content, be it radio shows, personal vlogs, original songs. John, should we call them image songs?
I doubt they fit the definition.
Okay, and hopefully our next episode should be more lighthearted as well.
And that's a wrap for the first episode of our currently unnamed Roseburn Avenue talk show. This has been John, our guitarist.
And Zach, the bassist.
And we'll see you next time.